The 2024 election is going to be a rematch of the 2020 election. That means there aren't a lot of new faces for Americans to pay attention to, save one, and that is Donald Trump's vice presidential pick. So who is he going to fill as his running mate in 2024? The reality is that vice presidential candidates almost never, I don't think there's any examples of how they have actually determined the result of a presidential election. The most important thing that vice presidential picks signify is how good of a decision maker you are as a presidential candidate. And the prime example of how making a not ideal vice presidential pick can reflect poorly on you is John McCain's pick of Sarah Palin in 2008. Voters didn't really say, oh, I'm not going to vote for that ticket because I don't like Sarah Palin. What we saw in the polls is that voters' view of John McCain worsened because they felt like he himself had made a bad decision. What voters were really saying is they don't think John McCain portrayed good decision-making skills in choosing Sarah Palin as a running mate. Oftentimes, when you think about how presidents pick their vice presidential candidates, you hear this term balancing the ticket, which is to say you want to choose somebody who offers something to voters that you yourself as the presidential candidate don't already offer. Back in 2016, Donald Trump was not particularly trusted by the more religious conservative part of the Republican Party.
So I'm here today to introduce the man who will be my partner in this campaign.
In choosing Mike Pence, Donald Trump was trying to shore up the evangelical vote, for example, which is a really important part of the Republican coalition. Fast forward to 2024, and Donald Trump is viewed quite favorably by the most conservative parts of the Republican Party. This time around, he may be looking to balance the ticket with somebody who's actually viewed as more moderate, because the places where he's lost the most support in America are in the suburbs and amongst independent or swing voters who actually cast a ballot for Joe Biden in 2020. When thinking about who Donald Trump is going to pick as his running mate, I think there are two ways to think about it. One, who he could pick that might boost his chances of winning re-election or election. And the other is who he could pick who will be most loyal to him, so he won't encounter the same dynamic that he encountered with Vice President Mike Pence. And so the first concern is that you want to, quote unquote, do no harm, which is you don't want to pick a candidate who the public views as so inadequate that reflects poorly on you, and therefore they don't want to vote for you. I mean, for example, Donald Trump has already nixed the idea of Vivek Ramaswamy, his former competitor in the Republican primary, but that might have been a pick that voters saw as too far out of left field, too inexperienced to actually serve as vice president, and therefore might have reflected poorly on Donald Trump. But when we're thinking about how he might want to, quote unquote, balance his ticket to be more electable in the fall, there are a couple ways to think about it. One, of course, is on the identity spectrum. If Donald Trump does want to pick a running mate of color, possibilities that have been floated are Florida Senator Marco Rubio or Congressman from Florida, Byron Donalds. The other thing he might consider is picking a woman to run alongside him. And they include folks like Senator Katie Britt, Governor Kristi Noem, even Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat from Hawaii. So that's something he's considering. But if you want to talk about this on the loyalty axis, who will be most loyal to Donald Trump, that's perhaps another question. And that's where folks like maybe J.D. Vance come into the picture. I think people have also suggested that Elise Stefanik would be very loyal.
Are we ready to elect President Donald J. Trump and fire Joe Biden?
In fact, she has suggested that the 2020 election was stolen, if that is going to be one of the litmus tests for how loyal you are to Donald Trump. Of course, it was not.
I always say they should endorse me because I'm the best thing that ever happened to their ratings. They should endorse me.
I prefer to provide context on these things as opposed to make predictions, but if I had to pick who Donald Trump was going to choose as his running mate, I would say probably Senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott.
Is this Donald Trump country?
Checks a lot of boxes in terms of he's more of a happy warrior type. He might appeal to a more moderate part of the electorate. He's also a black man. And I should also say that we have heard key Trump advisors sort of try to boost him and say that that's who they want it to be. But according to reports, there are a lot of folks that Donald Trump is considering for his running mate. And from what we understand, Donald Trump is looking forward to having an apprentice-style competition to see who will ultimately be his vice president.